Welcome back to Season 5 of the Changing Earth podcast with Sara F. Hathaway, blending survival fiction and fact to bring you entertaining education that will help you dream, survive, and thrive. And now, here's your host, Sara F. Hathaway.
Hello, and welcome back to the Changing Earth podcast. This is episode number 176, Season 5, Episode 13. We're starting to push up to almost 200 episodes of the Changing Earth podcast, which is pretty cool. We're just having a lot of fun with it. I'm having a lot of fun with it. I hope you are too, enjoying all the stories and all the great information that I'm finding for you guys. I'm learning a ton while I do it, so I hope you're learning a ton out there too. So over my weekend, we ran out of propane. Propane out here in California runs a lot of our stuff, including our dryer, our heater, our ovens, the stovetop. So we didn't run out, but we were getting to the point where we had like very little burning. We have this great big house and it takes a lot of energy to heat it. And with me and my poor little leg, I was feeling like I needed to be a little bit warmer, and we just blasted through our propane. But so we turned off a lot of the non-essentials so that the little bit of propane we had left we could use for our water heater and things like that. Even though we didn't want to run it, we didn't want to have to relight those pilot lights. It goes through a whole inspection process and all this to get those relit. So we didn't want to do any of that. So we took immediate steps to mitigate so we didn't run out. But we also didn't have, our stovetop and everything over the weekend. So, I thought it was a really fun adventure. We did poached eggs with hollandaise sauce on the wood burning stove, figuring that out. My husband was cussing up and down, and he was just having a ball with it. It was a ton of fun, right? But no, we figured out ways to make it happen, and I thought it was a really cool adventure figuring out, how would you cook on that thing. And also we didn't want to grease it up too much though, so we had to make sure that we were putting lids on stuff. So we did a lot of brats and sausage and things like that over the weekend, but really fun experiment. So, I encourage you, hey, shut some of your stuff down and have a weekend where you're just kind of roughing it. And the boys had fun with it. And or they said they did. I don't know if they're actually being truthful or not, but we had a rainy weekend here in California. I know it was storming across most of the country, so I hope everybody out there is okay. All my listeners in Alaska, hope you guys are doing well. And also my listeners out in Illinois, I know you guys got hit by some tornadoes and stuff out there. So prayers to everybody who is dealing with hard times this winter right now. And hopefully it just, gets a little better, I guess, because that's just no fun to be dealing with that stuff. But that's what we're all about. We're all about being prepared. And hopefully if you were in those areas, you were prepared for what was coming. So a couple of things that I was thankful for was the fact that we had lots of firewood ready to go for the winter. That was keeping us warm all weekend and also cooking our food. So, I encourage you to have a primary source of heat and eating and a secondary source. 2 is 1, 1 is none. So always have a backup to, how you could cook things, how you can stay warm, because it's just essential for us and in the preparedness community to be ready for any natural disasters that are headed our way, or unfortunate mishaps like the propane company not coming quick enough to fill up your tank when they're scheduled to do so. Everybody in Alaska, I believe that it's law there. I'm pretty sure when we lived in Michigan that we had to have not only a primary heating source, but a backup heating source too. So everybody who's up in Alaska without power, hopefully you guys are having a backup heating source, because in Alaska, it's a much bigger deal than out in California. I think we did freeze last night. We got below freezing. But man, you guys are dealing with way worse temperatures than we can even imagine here. So hopefully you have some kind of backup there. All right, getting into the dark days in Denver adventure. Last week, Erica, she met some new friends. She reunited with some old friends. And, the topic of mentorship and passing down these skills was really, really on the burner. And so I really wanted to address that. This week, Daniel and Erica are spending more time out at the homesteads and really exploring what's going on out there. Daniel's getting trained and Erica's hanging out and having fun. and here to talk to us today about real life homesteading, what that life looks like, and what it's worth to the people living it, is Jane Austen. So super stoked to have Jane Austen back on, better known as Survivor Jane. Always my pleasure to have her on the show. We always, I get a kick out of Jane. I draw so much inspiration and strength from her girl power. I just love it. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and jump into chapter 13 of Dark Days in Denver, and then we'll get right to the interview with Jane. Chapter 13. Daniel tore across the camp as soon as he left the mess. He stopped by the tent to grab his notebook, but didn't have any intention of using it. He went to the homesteader's gate and was allowed through after providing his name. He wondered how Mr. Rowan knew he would be coming, but he didn't really care. Daniel just wanted back into that beautiful studio. He ran up the steps and composed himself for a moment before knocking softly at the door. Waiting for what seemed like an eternity, he knocked again. The door swung open while Daniel's arm was still in the air. "Mr. Rowan, sir, I hope you don't mind me coming back by," Daniel said clumsily. "Not at all. I've been expecting you," he said. "Come in." Daniel entered the room. His painting was amongst the others on the wall. "I have another canvas for you," Mr. Rowan told him. "Oh, no, sir, I couldn't," Daniel protested, knowing how hard they were to come by. "Why don't you let me decide that, boy?" the old man insisted. "Today I want you to paint whatever you like. Anything at all," Mr. Rowan instructed, pulling out a chair in front of an easel. There was another one across the room. Daniel sat down deep in thought over what he would create. Mr. Rowan sat down at the alternate easel to work while Daniel did. The artist painted diligently throughout the afternoon, but this time Daniel did not lose track of time. The noise of the clock ticking echoed in his head, and his brush flew across the canvas. He focused on completing the project before he would be expected for dinner. When Daniel was finished, Mr. Rowan came to inspect his work. It was a colorful piece with a rainbow spiraling around the globe. "It's beautiful, but," Mr. Rowan said, pausing. No one ever said anything about Daniel's work besides how good it was. Daniel's curiosity over this man's opinion was intensifying. "But what, sir?" Daniel finally asked. "But you always work in happy places. When you draw your people, you turn them into lively cartoons with smiles and goofy faces. When you draw landscapes, you intensify the colors. Your artwork is always bright. Your work should be a reflection of yourself. Eventually, you will have to face the other side," Mr. Rowan explained. "Life needs colors, sir. If I have them, I'm going to use them. Colors are meant to be enjoyed while you can, because soon they'll be gone," Daniel expounded on his choices. Mr. Rowan was perplexed. This young artist was definitely worth figuring out. "I'm sorry to cut my visit short again, sir, but my grandparents will be expecting me," Daniel admitted, gathering his things. "I understand. I'll be expecting you tomorrow," Mr. Rowan directed. "I'll be here," Daniel said cheerfully, exiting the building. He wasn't late tonight. The days waiting for Greg and Penny's arrival passed in much the same fashion. Dexter was now working up at the homesteaders' housing area and soaked in all he could learn about how they survived. The homesteaders made their own soaps and butters. The gardens were vast and fed many. Their livestock thrived, and although their life was a challenge, it seemed simple enough. Vince would train with Erica in the morning and then head out to help with the efforts. The refugees poured in the gates day after day on their way north. Erica marveled at the endless flow and knew the same procession was taking place to the south as well. Star loved her new position and delighted in learning new recipes for foods she had never seen before. Erica and Victoria worked out a plan to cover for Erica's whereabouts. There was a training field way out in the back of the compound. Erica frequently spent time out there alone, practicing martial arts forms. Victoria would stand diligently at the entrance to the field, but there was a hole in the back of the fencing that no one knew about. The blackberries grew thick and obscured its location. Erica used it to sneak out of the base. Gear directed her to a back way into the compound so she could avoid the homesteader's gate, and she spent most of her free time out with the Colorado boys, as they were known locally. They went fishing and stalked the woodlands out behind the homesteads. Gear talked endlessly about his Nordic beliefs, but Erica was fascinated. She honored the same virtues of courage, truth, honor, fidelity, discipline, hospitality, self-reliance, industriousness, and perseverance that they did. Erica loved the days sitting peacefully on the edge of the pond, but the best days for fishing were when the clouds hung low and the cool, misty rain speckled the air. On one of these days, Erica stared out at the water, waiting for the bobber to move. The leaves spoke softly to the wind, shaking the water from its tips. The delicate song of the birds floated by as they frolicked in the summer coolness. "I know that look," Gear commented, as another gray cloud moved slowly across the sky, obscuring the sun. Erica looked at him curiously. "It's the stare of a warrior that has seen too much blood spilt on a battlefield," Gear suggested. "It's the truth," Erica admitted, shaking the rain that was accumulating on her hat off. "One day I will have to die victoriously in battle to reach Valhalla," Gear informed her. "I wish I could just stay here forever," Erica told him, watching Graham reel a fish in on the opposite shore. "It's safe, and the road has been long." "It's good to be in harmony with nature, but freedom is worth fighting for. I respect your spirit, Karen," he declared firmly. "In death is honor. A Nord shows respect but kneels to no one." "The fight is clear. It's the process that gets me. Sometimes I think one force is just the same as the other," she declared. "That's why we never got involved in that mess," Gear explained. "I'll fight for my home and my neighbors. I'll fight for my country. But the force and power is not the creation of our forefathers. They don't stand for freedom at all. The Mercs worked hand in hand with those bastards for a decade before they were forced to fight." "Why didn't you join the militia?" Erica wondered. "The timing hasn't been right. My dad was all wrapped up in it, and it got him killed. He didn't die fighting. He died hiding in a hole like a coward. When I go, it will be on a battlefield, defending my family's honor," he declared, drinking from a bottle of moonshine. "I'm sorry to hear that," Erica told him, regarding his father. Her rod suddenly bent towards the water, and she wrestled with an 8-pound fish, adding it to the pile on the dock. She checked the sun's position. "Gear, I gotta get back," Erica told him. She handed him the rod. "What's your hurry, Karen?" Gear asked. "The way you describe your husband, he seems like a cool guy." "Oh, he is. I just gotta get back to meet my kids for dinner," she lied. "That's not for a couple of hours," Gear commented. Erica could see Ned and Graham through the mist circling around the lake to come back. "Look, Gear, I just gotta go, okay?" she told him, walking away. "See you guys later," she yelled to Ned and Graham as she left. Erica knew she was late, so she ran as fast as she could. Her boots sloshed on the wet ground as the off spray flew through the air. She skirted the outside of the camp to avoid the mass of people and used the small hole in the back fencing. She was drenched and muddy by the time she reached the field. She started running drills around the cones she had set out on the grass. Not 2 seconds later, her efforts were rewarded when Bennett appeared with Lieutenant General Merkley. Erica quickly ceased her training and rapidly closed the distance between her and the approaching men. "Hello, sir," Erica greeted them with a stiff salute. The rain dripped off the brim of her hat as she tried to catch her breath. "Hello, Private Case," Merkley greeted her. "Thank you for laying low these past few days. I wanted to personally let you know that your friends have been located and they are on the caravan that arrives tomorrow." "Thank you so much, sir," Erica elated in the news. Her friends were safe. "I envy your dedication, Erica. If it's not raining, you're not training, right?" He jested with her. "Keep up the good work, Private." Erica smiled widely, happily accepting the man's compliments. "Take care," he concluded, walking back towards the building. Bennett lingered for a moment. "That's an awful lot of mud on your pants and not a lot of mud on the field," he whispered as they followed Merkley towards the building. Victoria fell in behind them. Erica shrugged at him with a wide smile. "I was running laps earlier on the other field," she explained quickly. "Anyway, I gotta go tell the family the news. See you later, First Sergeant," she concluded, running towards the gate with Victoria close behind. He stared at her as she left. "I know that woman. Something is up," he thought. He wanted to get to the bottom of it, but he remembered he was late for his date with Michelle. Happy with her charade, Bennett is a little bit suspicious of what Erica's up to, but he's relaxing, enjoying his time, so he's not really concerned about it. And these homesteads that I wrote about in Dark Days in Denver, they're a really important piece to the survival of not only this community, but all these people they're assisting because, they're being further and further displaced by what's happening. So, they're doing their part to help these people out on their journey as they migrate to different areas of the country where there's still land left. And I thought it was really important to explore, some of what it looks like to own and operate a homestead and just, see what that life is like. So here today is Jane Austen, or Survivor Jane. Like so many women, Jane was a self-professed, oblivious to what was going on around me city girl. She was clueless about politics, the economy, and the ever-changing weather patterns around her. It wasn't until she personally experienced a life-threatening assault at gunpoint, lived through several violent hurricanes, and watched as her 401k dwindled down to next to nothing that her eyes began to open to what was going on around her. In 2008, she took a huge leap of faith, quit her corporate job, sold her home for next to nothing, cashed in her 401k, which was even more next to nothing, and moved to Western North Carolina to live a more self-sustaining and self-reliant lifestyle. Giving up the life of eating at different restaurants each night and having her nails and hair done every 2 weeks, she began to research how to prepare for uncertain times and still retain her girliness. While searching preparedness websites, she noticed that most were male-oriented. Frustrated at the need to research a word, phrase, or term that she didn't understand each time she went on one of these sites, it began to dawn on her that the reason she didn't understand these sites was because a lot of them were written by men. And as we all know, men and women speak a different language and therefore process information differently. Jane decided then and there to make it her mission to educate others, with an emphasis on women on how to better prepare themselves by creating the website SurvivorJane.com. Writing on a multitude of topics dealing with disaster survival and preparedness, while interjecting bits and pieces of humor on personal experiences, discoveries, and her journey along the way. SurvivorJane.com also reaches preparedness-minded men who may have just begun their preparedness journey or have sent the women in their lives, a girlfriend, wife, daughter, mother, aunt, or grandmother to the site, and in the process was also helped to better understand preparedness from a woman's perspective. As an additional outreach, Jane uses social media networks. She is the creator of the internationally recognized hashtag PrepperTalk on Twitter that brings preparedness-minded people from all over the world together to discuss preparedness ideas, suggestions, and information with one another. It is currently the largest prepper community on Twitter. Jane has been featured on National Geographic Channel's Doomsday Prepper, Season 4, and in Newsweek's special edition Off-Grid Prepper and Shooter magazine, Preparedness Magazine. She is a contributing writer to National Geographic Channel's Doomsday Prepper blog TV. Where There Is No Cosmetic Counter and its first revision, Emergency Survival Hygiene, were written out of a need to bring more awareness to one of the most overlooked areas in preparedness, personal hygiene, by showing easy ways to make personal hygiene products. After all, infectious diseases are the #1 cause of death worldwide. In her book, What Could Possibly Go Wrong? How to Go From Completely Clueless to Totally Prepared, she talks to the reader in easy-to-understand language about her personal experiences and what she has learned could go wrong around us and how we can better prepare ourselves and family for these uncertain times. If you would like to find out more about Survivor Jane, head on over to www.survivorjane.com. That's www.survivorjane.com. So let's go ahead and welcome Jane to the show. Today, I'm super stoked. I got Jane Austen, Survivor Jane, back on the show. Hi, Jane. How are you doing today?
Hey, I'm fine. Thank you once again for inviting me. I'm just, you might as well just call this the Sara and Jane show. I don't know. I mean, you've just given me this opportunity to come on so many times. I love your fan base. Everybody is always so kind. I get a lot of feedback. Hey, I heard you on Sarah's podcast. So it's just heartwarming. And I thank you again for inviting me back.
Well, it's just my pleasure to have you. I always love picking your brain about all the cool little homesteading stuff that you're doing over there. And that is what we're going to talk about today. So I'm just like, oh man, I got to have Jane back on to talk about this because you got some cool stuff going over there.
Thank you.
Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself, let people know where to find you. That way, well, if we get just cruising along on the, the topic, we've already given them the info that they need to be able to see.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'm Survivor Jane for those of you who don't know, or Jane Austen, but my avatar and moniker or whatever you want to call it, you can find my little avatar on all the social media under Survivor Jane, which is Twitter and Facebook and Instagram and Google Plus and Facebook.
Oh man.
And YouTube. So I'm trying to kick it up a little bit more for YouTube. So if there's anything anybody wants to see or hear, or whatever, they want to just get on my blog and say, hey, I'd love to see you do this. I'm all up and open for it. But again, Sarah, thank you for inviting me, and let's get into this.
Alrighty. So, Jane, how large of a piece of property do you think you need to sustain this year-round food supply?
Well, you know what? It's actually a misnomer that you have to have a lot of space. Now, my husband, Rick Austin, the survivalist gardener, he actually created this plan, if you will. He calls it nature culture, where actually we only have a half an acre of garden space. And the reason we only have that is because he actually has designed this this garden, if you will, which to me it's like a Garden of Eden. It's absolutely unbelievable.
Yeah,
but
it
he
is
actually,
wicked cool.
it's just, but it produces so much food that on this half acre, and he starts with a tree, a basic fruit or a nut tree. Then he puts his berry bushes around it, and then he does his herb layer. Now, if you can picture, we have a downward slope south exposing. So we have these things that are called berms, and it's just like a super slide. I don't know if you have remember those, but way back when they used to have these hills, you'd get on a burlap bag and you'd slide down this ginormous slide. Well, that's what our backyard was initially looked like once he'd finished his grading. And then he just planted these concentric circles all over the place. So that as time went along and things grew, it just kind of like there are grapes going up into our apple trees, and there are herbs everywhere, and there's things that we didn't even plant that come in that are like pioneer plants that come in. So when you say how much property do you need, it depends on what kind of a garden you're going to grow. We don't have any water that we don't water, we don't use pesticides, we don't use fertilizer. But if you were to do the straight row garden, well, most people, they like to do, I don't know, how many ears of corn would you do? I don't know, 15, 20,
you need a bunch.
How much, it's just rows and rows and rows and rows of the same thing. What happens is a little bug will start at the beginning of the row, and it'll just like go down like a smorgasbord and just eat it away. Yep. Well, in our garden, we actually have a bush here. We might have a tomato here. We might have a tomato all the way down into the back 40s. We might make, so we have it. They're all dispersed. They're all growing naturally. They're all doing what they need to do, reaching for the sun, reaching for the soil. And so that when you're saying how much property do you need, it depends on if you want to do it the smart way or if you want to do it the way that probably going to set yourself up for failure eventually.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I'm definitely implementing Rick's. I have the whole, we did a big podcast episode on that, and I'll link it in. But next place that we're at, I'm definitely implementing that straight off the bat because it's just so impressive. And the amount of research that he did as far as like all the Monsanto information that he shares and all, it's just incredible. So anybody out there listening, you should definitely go pick up Rick's books on The Secret Garden of Survival because it's phenomenal ideas for gardening, and you'll really appreciate the fact that you did.
Well, Sarah, the reason that we actually moved on the homestead was because we were trying to get away from consumerism, and a lot of people don't think about the fertilizers and the pesticides and all this other stuff that they're putting on their gardens just to get a food supply that we're not necessarily going to have if something happens. So that's another, you have to put these things into, okay, if this happens, could I get this? If that happened, and that is including your food source. And if you're contemplating a garden as your food source, you've got to think down the road, okay, am I going to be able to get these things? Or can I create a garden where I don't need these things? And that's where
Yeah.
the thought process came in for this.
And so for year-round supply, because you guys are out in the mountains too, you're getting hit with winter and stuff like that. So you're just harvesting the crud out of it all summer long and then
And
putting
I
it up
am
for the.
whining every bit of the
Uh-huh.
way. I'll tell you what, it is stressful, but I
Yeah.
have to remember that, Sarah, because of those elements, we might have a freeze at the
Yeah.
last minute, right where you had those blooms and where you
Hmm.
had a bumper crop of peaches and pears and apples and plums and mangoes, or on and on and on and on. Um, this year you don't have anything. So you
Right.
have got to look at it as a blessing, because we are not in control of the weather. The weather's going to do what it has to. Now, I do have a greenhouse, thank goodness, so that I actually have duplicate of a lot of things, that like the herbs and
Right.
whatnot, that I have in my greenhouse. So that helps out also, as far as continuing the growth cycle. But there's a lot of variables that come into it. And so just like our great great grandparents used to do, I mean,
Hmm.
they would put that time and effort into preserving all of this food, because you did not know what was going to happen. So yeah, I might have a bagillion cans of applesauce or apple butter or apple pie filling, or just plain apple slices. You're thinking, wow, that's an awful lot of apples. Yeah, it is, but I use them, and I will use them next year also, if in fact we don't have, something. So I
Yeah.
always rotate our food also. So those are things that you have to think about as far as your food supply.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. What if next year you don't have that big
Yep,
crop, and so then at least you got some that was put away and stuff like that.
absolutely.
Yeah, and you don't plant a lot of corn and stuff, but it's not really
We
necessary if you
don't
step
plant
out
corn. In
of the
fact, if you
box.
said
Yeah.
the corn word to my husband, he probably would have a small meltdown, because it's like,
Right.
unfortunately, everything is in it. I mean, everything is made of corn these days, and
Right.
knowing what is actually been genetically put into these plants, I mean, I just think that we're walking time bombs anyhow. So if we can
Yeah.
kind of reverse it and start putting good stuff that hasn't been filled, that you know where it's coming from, because it's in your soil, it's in your canning jars, it's in you are responsible for whatever goes into your food. At least we're trying to backpedal and see if we can't, reverse
It's a
the
it's a
damage.
right. It's impressive. My husband was diagnosed with arthritis in both his hips.
Hmm.
So we cut out gluten, sugars, we minimize sugars.
Yeah.
Uh, no processed foods, no nightshade vegetables, and just really watched our diet. And within like 2 months, we lost 20 pounds each.
Oh, I
Just,
believe it.
you
I
know,
believe it. Yep.
yeah,
People wonder,
just,
well, I don't have time to diet. It's not a matter of diet, it's a
it's
matter
not
of diet change. It's that
exactly.
diet has got such a nasty connotation, but the bottom line is, I'm not asking you to go out there and run 3 miles a day. I'm asking you to change your diet so that you know what you're putting into your body and knowing how your body reacts to that food.
Yeah.
Another thing with the food supply is we save our seeds. So anything
Yes.
that
Okay.
comes in, we take a good juicy whatever it is, and we will actually dry those out and preserve them so that they're ready for next year. So we have an abundance. So again, that's another expense that we don't have to really worry about.
Yes, because you're just reharvesting the seeds over. Is
Absolutely.
there different techniques for different seeds, or is it
There
in case?
are, yeah.
Uh-huh.
You're talking about your like your peaches and your plums or whatever, where you have to actually put those into like I forget what the word is off the top of my head, where you're actually putting them in a hibernating time over the
Okay.
winter. So I have a little area in my refrigerator that I will keep some of those the peaches and the bigger nut fruits. I'll keep them in there. As far as the other ones, like your annual vegetables and what have you, I'll
Mhm.
actually just keep those in a nice, cool, dark area out of the light until the next year.
Okay. Yeah, I thought thought there was a little bit of discrepancy and like you don't want to take a peach pit and just dry that sucker out. It's not going to work.
It's not going to work. Absolutely, it's not. In fact, actually, that pit actually has the seed inside of the pit, which most people don't realize. They're thinking the pit is the seed, when there's actually a seed in the pit. So, there you go.
I'll have to break that sucker open and get a little bit more inquisitive. Do you take it out of the casing, or you leave it in the fridge in the pit?
I leave it in. I leave it in until it's
and
time.
And when you plant it,
I take it out.
Okay. Interesting.
Yep.
I never would have done that, so no wonder mine never grow. And then for protein, you guys have some really cool stuff going on for protein as well. So let's walk through where you're getting some of your proteins from.
Well, lots of my protein are from the dairy, lots and lots. I've got my rabbits. Now we have Champagne d'Argent rabbits, which just sounds like an awful pointy rabbit, like I need to have my little pinky up or something, but it just means big old gray rabbit or silver rabbit, and they are huge. I would say there's only the two of us, and one rabbit can actually be 4 to 6 meals, easy peasy. And I use rabbit, Sarah, I use rabbit for everything. I use it for baking. I actually fry it. I'll make rabbit fingers, if you will, just rabbit strips. I'll make baked rabbit. I've made pulled rabbit, like pulled pork, but in the barbecue sauce, I'll just make the pulled rabbit. It's almost like chicken where it takes on whatever the taste of the whatever you put in it, if you will. So I've been able to just make so many different, with mozzarella and ham, the chicken cordon, but it's rabbit cordon. So I haven't come up with some really exciting names for what I make. It's just I've used rabbit instead of chicken, and it all turns out so good because it's all white meat, and so there's just a lot of protein in that. And then of course the ducks, we have we've got khaki Campbells, and then we have the Pekings, and the Pekings are the big old white, the big white ducks, and they've got a lot of meat on them. The Pekings, we have those more for, the khaki camels are more of a egg layer because of the fact that they will lay anywhere from, I think it's like 350 to 360 eggs each a year. It's just like duck egg,
yep.
And so we got those for more of a egg duck instead of a meat duck, because you'd get ripped off if you try to eat one of those things. It's like their energy all goes to laying the eggs.
Gotcha.
And then of course chickens, we have chickens, and they are the Rhode Island Red, so they're meat and egg layers. So that's pretty much our meat source.
Okay. The Rhode Islands are good for that. I like the Americanas too. They're pretty hardy for California.
Are they?
Yeah, they're hardy little girls, so they lay a lot of eggs and survive well in the heat and stuff like that. So
the heat, a lot of people don't think about, you have got to take care of your animals. You've got to understand that it's not just a matter of having them. There's, you've got to have shelter for them. You've got to have water for them. You've
shade.
got to have land
for them. Shade is big.
Yeah.
Yep. And then we've got a lot of hawks that like to come in and try and get your chickens. So yep. My mom's like, I'm shooting the hawk. I'm like, no, you're not. I watched that hawk grow up from a little teeny fletchling. Nuh-uh. I'd rather just put a cover over, give them someplace to hide, and they can run away,
Space. Yep, and they will.
Save
the
hawk.
Chickens can move. Yep, they can. Move. Yep.
Yeah, and they get pretty big too. So after a while, the hawk's like, it's not going to work.
Just go get a field mouse.
Yeah, so that's some great protein sources. The ducks, I'm still playing with duck recipes. I gotta, I have raised Muscovies, and so I've done some whole birds, basically because I'm giving them away as Christmas presents. But I usually just take the breasts and legs off of them, and then
that's it. Yeah, that's pretty much so. Yeah.
Yeah. And then when you do the breast, do you maintain the skin on so that you have that to cook with, or do you just pull that off to you?
You know what? Rick is just one of those. Same with the chickens. Why pluck them. He just actually will just take the coat off,
That's
just
it.
take the
Yep.
skin off. And it's
Yeah.
just too much time to feather and whatever. And it's like, you know what? We usually don't eat the skin anyhow. We're just more of the meat
Mhm.
portion person, so, it's just easy peasy on the chickens and the ducks to do the same way. Just
Yeah.
take that outer coat off with the feathers and all and just
That's what I
uh,
found.
cook them. Yeah.
My breast meat was a little dry last time though, so I was like, well, maybe if I would have, because the Muscovies are really easy to pluck actually. Doesn't take a lot of time to pull it off the breast. So I was like, well,
hmm
maybe if I would have kept that, fatty
And I'm
layer.
sure, I'm sure you could. I'm a
Mhm.
baster. I like to just
Oh,
baste
okay.
in a little bit of drawn butter or whatever. So I will
Yeah.
baste it, which helps out a lot,
Okay.
just to keep a little bit more of that moisture in it.
Yeah, I did mine like, like I would do a chicken breast. I just, usually bread it, stuff like that, throw it in the
Oh, I
oven.
see what you're
Like,
saying. Yeah. Yeah.
right? And I was like, this is so dry.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
so that's a great idea. Cool. Cool. That's gives me gives me more,
That's my
cooking
Martha Stewart moment there, okay?
there. Yeah, there you go. Well, when you're in the kitchen now,
Yeah.
Julia Childs.
Uh-huh. That's
There you
more like I am. Whoop, here we go.
yeah, absolutely. Alrighty,
Uh,
so let's get into some of the, just alternate activities that you do to save money and also, just handling things on the homestead. So I know that you have a cool laundry system that you do as far as not using the machines and that, which, I'm kind of jealous that you actually take the time to do that. I have so much laundry.
it was
Uh,
necessity, honestly.
right?
It all came about as far as the laundry system, just as in June of this year. Um, we don't have high finagled, high priced equipment here. We
Mm.
actually took the equipment that we had from Orlando here. So that means that just about all of my appliances are at least 20 years old now. And the old washing machine decided to die.
Uh-huh, okay.
And Rick was right on the heels of having some surgery, major surgery with complications, which means that I had to do everything that he did and everything that I did for quite a while. And then you couple that with a broken washing machine, and it was like, I'll tell you what, that hole in the backyard was looking pretty good for him. I was going to shove him in there, bury him, and head for the city because
It's
it was like,
over.
I don't think I can do all of this, but it really
Right.
is amazing. But I decided I'd fill the bathtub up, not fill it up. I'd put the laundry in the bathtub, and I thought, okay, now what am I going to do? So I went and I remember, when you see all these homestead and blogs and whatever, everybody
The
uses the
plunger.
plunger.
Yeah,
And
right.
it's like, okay. So I used a plunger and all of that water just came right back up on me. And it was like, doggone it all. So I went out and I took Rick's drill and I drilled holes around the plunger. And all that did was just gave me like 5 or 6 more spurts into the face. And it's like, oh
Okay.
my gosh, are you kidding me? Why are they saying use this plunger? So I went and found this little plastic bowl, cut a little hole in it, and slid it down over the plunger, which it put like a little umbrella, if you will. So I was able to get that force that you need to get into the clothes, but it wasn't coming back on me. And then
Gotcha.
I took the actual handle from the plunger and I replaced it with a broom handle so I
Oh,
didn't
yeah,
have to
so it's
bend
longer?
down because I
Yeah.
tell you what, after that first time, it was like, we are not wearing clothes up here anymore.
Right?
So it's like no laundry. We don't even have to worry about it. But I was able to get this down to an art. And I'll tell you what, um, the clothes really actually came cleaner than what it did in the washing machine because I'm actually putting that effort into it and energy
Yep.
and seeing how it's cleaned. But then I came up with an issue. My hands were getting raw from
Oh,
wringing out
yeah.
the clothes. It was like, oh my gosh, I can't do. How did they do this? I
Right.
need some type of leverage. I need something that I can help. So I went and put some, the neoprene, like or I guess it's a neoprene, the rubber gloves, just like the surgical type of gloves.
Yeah.
I put those on and I took my plunger stick and I fold it the clothing around it. And so then I had leverage. I could just hold one end and just
Gotcha.
twist that handle. It worked like a charm. I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I've just invented. Everybody thought the Heine hydrant was great, which was the garden sprayer. Look that up on my blog if you don't know what I'm
Yeah,
talking
yeah.
about.
Yep.
But this was like I now had the wonder stick. It was like I could wring my clothes out because I'm always hearing people
Love it.
say, "Well,
Love
why
wonder
don't you
stick.
get one of those ringers?" Well, the
Yeah.
reason I don't get them is because they're like $150,
Yeah, and
and
now they're vintage, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
I mean,
Mm.
well, even the vintage ones, you might have to, I mean, do screws replacing them and have them worked or whatever. So I did a lot of
Yeah.
research. It's like I don't have the money because what I found out, Sarah, is you're talking way back when our great grandparents used to do it, or grandparents, to now we're consumers. And everything that is made out of a consumer product is meant to go bad. And that's
Yes.
including these new ringers, which
Mhm.
they're made of an inferior kind of rubber opposed to what they were way back when. And they will get a memory. They'll get like a fisheye, if you will.
Okay.
So that, and so I'm doing all of this research. Now there might be some ladies that say, "Well, that hasn't happened to me yet." And I say, "Good for you, but I didn't have the 150 to just take that chance. I needed to get stuff done." And so it's kind of like in necessity is the mother of invention. You will
Yes.
use what you have to be able to make something happen. So yeah, I do my laundry, and that's my little laundry story. And I wash my dishes by hand.
Yep.
Everything
Us
I
too.
if
The dishwasher broke and it ain't getting replaced. So it's like, all
no, I mean
right,
because of the fact
18-year-old.
but you have to condition yourself for that.
Yeah,
You really do,
absolutely.
because I think what's going to happen is everybody's got their bug out bags filled with stuff. They think they're going to bug out,
Mhm.
or they think they're going to bug in, or whatever they're going to do, but they're not used to doing anything by hand. And
Absolutely.
it's going to be exhausting for them. We don't own a big field tractor. Anything that we have, we've got to kind of do it by hand. And
Yep.
we don't have
Yep.
central air or heat. We have a little wood stove, but we
Yeah,
have
but
heavy,
Rick
heavy.
has that really cool setup from the greenhouse that
Yep,
produces. That's
all that
that's
heat
a
comes in.
phenomenal idea. Yep.
People don't even think about, the heat from the greenhouse that comes in through the vents. And I'll tell you, sometimes it gets a little stifling because it's so warm.
Uh
Um,
huh. Okay.
I've learned how to sew. I've learned how to mend. People think, Rick's always coming in. We wear gloves and boots all the time on the
Yep.
homestead. You have to. Safety is paramount up here.
Yep.
And so he's always getting holes in his gloves. I've always got to mend them because there's nothing wrong with the rest of the glove. It just might have a hole here, a hole there. So, you have to learn how to do these things. And times time consuming, absolutely, because that gets in the way of all the other chores that you have to do for
Yeah.
the animals and for preserving and whatnot.
Yeah. So you got your sewing pile like piled up for the
Yeah,
winter time when
absolutely.
you're
Yep.
ready to.
Yep.
You got some time to burn. When you're sewing, you're doing it with the machine and by hand both.
Most of the time it's by hand. I'm
By
trying
hand.
to learn new stitches so that I can
Okay.
do, so that it's just as tight, if not tighter, than a sewing machine would do. Do I have a sewing machine? Yes. Yes, I do.
Mhm.
But I do try to do as much as I can by hand.
Yeah, that's what I had put a whole bunch of new patches on my martial arts uniforms. I'm like, well, I could go pay the tailor, $35 to do this. I'm like, oh, forget it.
And you
Mom
can
taught
do
me how
it
to
in
do
like
it.
in
Yep.
5 minutes, and
Yep.
probably it'll be tighter because they're just going to run it through a machine, and there
Yep.
you go.
And
But
it wrinkles
again,
up the fabric
yep,
underneath and
yep,
everything because machine's pulling at it and that. I'm like, no, I got this.
yep.
So yeah, okay. So we talked a little bit. I'm gonna go ahead and link our last episode that we did because we talked a little bit about soaps and things like that in there on just different things we can use for soaps. Now I know there's a
Yeah.
plant that we have here that's called wavy leaf soap plant
Uh-huh.
and it produces this huge ball, this huge root ball that will actually be. It's all this mucusy soap that you can use, but you're not going to be able to, rely solely upon that.
Mm-hmm.
So there are alternate options, like in nature, that people can check out for soaps as far as that goes.
Oh yeah, they've got like soap nuts out there. I've got
Mhm.
soap wart that I'm growing right now. It doesn't have a
Okay.
sud, but it's the same concept. There are a lot of different things that people aren't even thinking about that if they do their research now, you're going to find out that that it's not all about buying the commercial stuff. There are things that you can start growing right now.
Yeah, and you need to know what's like available in your area because, of course, all the
The
areas are
zones, yeah,
different. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. What geographical zone you're in,
Hmm.
and know
Yeah,
what
and
that's.
I do want to bring that up even with your gardening that I highly suggest you do research when people are talking about when you hear the term zone, what it means is that our nation, our country is actually cut into different zones. It
Mhm.
means how much water are you going to get, how much sun are you going to get, how much cold are you going to get, how much, and then it actually will tell you what are better trees, fruit, vegetables, anything and everything that would be specific to your zone or your area. You're all the way over in Southern California. I'm all the way over on the East Coast. So what I can grow, you might not necessarily be able to grow.
Yep. Yeah. Just different zones. So, yeah, but I'm in Northern California, so I have
Oh,
to,
you
I
are.
have
Oh,
to
sorry.
maintain that
I
one.
flipped you.
I'm like, I don't do Southern California. Please don't relate me with those
I
people.
feel
That's
sorry
not
for you that you're
Heather.
in California and it didn't matter north or south, but I
Right?
apologize.
But there's so many zones just within California that it's
Yeah.
incredible. Yeah.
Yes.
So
It's
it's
amazing.
really important to know, like you're saying, where you're at, what's going to work for you. You can't just take a stamp and think, oh, well, this is
No.
going to work great for me.
No. In
Because
fact,
it
if you're
might not
doing
at all.
seed swaps, I know lots of people that do seed swaps or whatever. Make sure that whatever you're getting that you can actually grow in your area. If not,
Right.
you've just spent or wasted energy that could have gone into something else.
Yeah, at a lot of the expos, they have like, buy the seed pack, the seed pack, the seed pack. I'm like, yeah, well, what area is that for? You
That's
know?
right. And
So,
that again, that's a consumer thing. And I do caution everybody. I'm trying to be as anti-consumer as I can and trying to instill that into everybody is that it's not all about buying. Is it investing? Absolutely. If you invest in a seed bank that is specific to your zone, that's
yep.
great. But if you're investing in a seed bank that you don't have a clue, number one, what it is, if you like it, if it will grow, and so that you have to do a little bit of research. Don't do the lazy way because it's going to come back and bite you in the fanny if you do. So just
So
do
true.
the research so that you have a happy ending.
So how about acorns? Because acorns are something that exists, all across our country, which is great. It's a great source of food. Do you use your acorns out there?
I haven't because they
Okay.
are time consuming.
Yeah, they
I
are.
mean,
They are.
you have to soak and you have to soak and you have to
Yep.
soak and you have to soak
You know
because you
what
got
I
to get those
do?
tannins out. Oh,
I
I want
know.
to hear what you do.
I take so I'll harvest out my acorns, take the insides out, squish them all up as hard as I can, try and beat them all up as much as I can. Then I
Okay.
put them in a pantyhose and I put them in the back of the toilet in the tank part, right?
Well, let me tell you, that would be all well and good, and I've heard people do that. So
Uh-huh.
when you flush, it's
Yep.
actually is but we have a compost toilet, so you would be telling me to
Oh,
put
that's
that
right.
into a bunch of poop,
Yep.
and I'm not going to do it.
No, no, yeah, you can't do it with a compost toilet. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, so it does take the amount, of
it
time to
does,
rinse
and that's
them
what
and
it
stuff.
was. It was like it was so much, but I know lots of people they do, collect
Yeah.
them. They do. If you have a stream, even
Yep.
that would be great because you
Yep.
could just
That's a
tie the
great.
pantyhose or cheesecloth or whatever that you can because you want to flush the tannins
Yep.
because those are the things that it will make you sick. But then once you do that, you dry them out. You can make acorn flour. You can use that flour the same as you could for everything else. For me, I just don't have the means or the water supply that I could just waste because of the fact
Right?
that you
Yeah,
do
because you
need
have to
moving
rinse it
water
some
to do
more.
that.
Yep, it's
Absolutely.
true. It's true. A quick way to make them, you can just take them, break them, get out the insides, and then you smush them down, roast it, smush them down, roast it, smush them down, roast it. So you're roasting out the tannins
Oh,
basically,
that's interesting. I
right?
didn't even know you could do that. Oh, okay.
And so you just keep smushing and roasting until it's like this really fine meal, and then put that in tea and drink the tea, and it has a natural caffeine in it. Really gets you pepping, and you put a little caramel in there with it, and oh, it's so good. It's really good.
Wow. No, I've never heard of that, and I don't know that your fan base has either. But I'll tell you what, that sounds good. And I have an abundance of both white oak and red oak. So, I mean, I have acorns.
Yeah, so if you're looking for like that little treat, it gets a little bit colder and you're looking for that little treat, acorn tea is really yummy. So,
Oh, thanks.
So, Jane, you put all this work into being self-sustainable and getting rid of the consumerism, which respect, props for that. I'm envious. So does this feel like a thankless job? Do you ever, just be like, oh, like you say, I'm done. I'm going back to the city kind of thing, or
I honestly, Sarah, only had that one time, and that was, and I do want people to think about this. If something was to happen to your partner, if something was to happen to your marriage, if something was to happen to, are you going to throw it all away? Because that first day of me carrying those 5-gallon buckets down the hill to feed the boys, up the hills to feed the girls, as far as water them, and
Yep.
I mean, Rick is absolutely 100 pounds more than I am. I mean, he
Yep.
has the arm strength, he has the body strength. It didn't matter. I had to do it all. It had to be done. And I'll tell you, I was exhausted because I still had to do my regular home chores inside. I had to take care of him. I The city looked good, for
Right?
that first couple days, and I had to do it about 3 weeks because he couldn't do any lifting at all. And I mean, he felt horrible, but there's
Oh, of
nothing he
course.
could do. He had to
Yep.
heal. But people need to take these things into consideration. After it passed, after I got used to, okay, I can do this. I was just kind of stressing at first, but it honestly, that's what got the better of me, is the stress, not that I
Yeah.
couldn't do it. When I learned that I could do it and I could get a rhythm, that I would stage things so that I'd have the water already poured for the next day, and I did this. And when you start getting a system to it, which I didn't have a plan, I just went out and did it.
Right.
Once I got that plan, the stress was gone. Now, honestly, it's insurance for us. People pay a lot of money to have insurance. This is our insurance. We paid a lot of money for our homestead, for our animals, for our garden, the seeds for our garden, for this, and that. Now, we're just sitting back and reaping what we sow.
Yeah, I love that. Because, like I say, if something were to happen like that, you're already staged up to be able to just walk into that life and be like, yeah, we don't need power. What
Yep,
none
yep.
of that really matters.
And
We're onward and upward.
honestly, you talk about thankless. It's not thankless because we live it. And
Yep.
again, a little pet peeve of mine is not practicing any of your preps. I'd
Yeah.
suggest taking a weekend, taking a day of a weekend, either even shut the power off, or not necessarily shut it off, but just keep it hands off for everybody, and just
Yep.
see how that how hard it actually is at first or initially to do this. Start doing, okay, what would you do? You don't have any power. Now, I'm not talking about as in hurricane or whatever. I'm talking about, let's talk grid down.
Long
Grid's
term.
not coming back up. So,
Okay.
or anytime soon. And see, I mean, it is stressful.
Right. Funny story. Out here in California now, whenever we have a severe wind circumstance, we've had all the wildfires,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Yeah. So whenever we have a severe wind storm, we have wind storms out here. And whenever we have a severe windstorm, they shut our power down now because they need to go through and check all the lines to make sure that nothing got blown down. There's nothing laying on a line, because that can burn down just thousands of
Oh,
acres,
yeah.
in a
Uh-huh.
heartbeat.
Mm-hmm.
So we were without power for 2 days. And you would have thought that, like, oh, the end of the world had arrived. Everybody was going to die. The kids couldn't go to school. It was just
And
like end
that's
of the world,
not just you, Sarah. That was your
right?
neighbors. That was the
Yeah.
people in
No,
town.
no.
That was
Yeah.
everybody, and everybody
We
is
were
just
fine,
stressing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we were
Yep.
fine. We actually got to keep our power on. I don't know why, but we kept ours on. But yeah, to hear it from the neighbors, you're like, well, I know who's not going to be in my survival group now.
People don't think about when you get hot or
Yep.
you get cold, you get irritable,
Yeah,
and
it's
you
true.
get hungry, you get irritable. And all of those things are going to come into play when you can't just walk up and open up your refrigerator because you've got to keep it closed to keep the power, whatever,
Yeah.
if it's a short emergency, like you're talking about the wind or whatever. But there are a lot of, I don't know if it's emotions that you would call it, but there are going to be a lot of changes that people are going to go through.
Yeah, they don't
And
like that.
so you do need to practice, and it's too easy. We're just so
Mhm.
set in our ways that we don't want to practice. We want stuff. We want to have consumer stuff. and that's going to get us through. And it's not. I'll tell you, what's going to kill you or kill each other is going through that, that the changes, the mental changes.
Yeah, here's the consumer icing on the cake for you. They went and printed T-shirts that you could buy that was "I survived the power outage."
And I bet they sold like hotcakes.
I seriously think so. I was just, oh my gosh. I was like, you
Funny.
guys are freaking pathetic, man.
That's funny, funny, funny.
Yeah, because we're just not used to it. We don't really get storms. We don't get power shut off. We're pretty lucky where we're at besides the
I
wildfires.
say deliberately shut it
Right?
off, even if it's just
Exactly.
a day.
Yeah. So when you're looking for property to start a homestead like this, are there certain laws, regulations that individuals should really be aware of when they're seeking out, like you say, it's your insurance, it's your investment?
Absolutely. Sarah, I mean to tell you, it is unbelievable. And if you don't know it, it's your own fault.
Yep.
A lot of people, what they do is they're going out looking for property and they're looking for the stream or they're looking for the water.
Mhm.
They're looking for they're looking for all of the niceties, thinking that they're going to go ahead and have this perfect homestead. And then they find out it is against the law to
Right.
have a water catchment system. It's against the law to have animals close to 500 feet from something. It's against, so along with looking for the perfect elements of a homestead, you also have to do your research in those zones, in those areas. There's local, there's state, and there's federal rules that you have to look into to make sure that you're able to create the best retreat or homestead that you can. And every place is different. So just because I'm doing this doesn't mean that you can do this. You're going to have to look into what and even deed restrictions and on and on and on as far as
Mhm.
your property.
Yeah, we have an old road that runs across ours. And even though it's not a road, it's nothing on our property, right? But because it used to be the road back in the 1800s or whatever, we can't do anything with that strip across the property, and it's
Right,
just
it
like an
is deeded
overgrown.
into that
Yeah.
property. Yeah,
Yep.
so you have to think about that. And what that means is that possibly somebody that has access to that will be driving right through
Yeah.
eventually, maybe 50 years from now, 20 years from now, 5 years from now, can actually have access. So just because your property is the way you want it now doesn't mean, so you need to look around your property that you're looking at also. What's going to happen? Will they bring a big development in
Mhm.
here, so all of a sudden you
Yep.
have a homestead with a big shopping center right behind you? Or
Yep.
so you have to take those type of things into consideration when looking for your property also, along with the laws, the regulations, and restrictions.
That's a great point. I actually had a friend who was living out in the city by us called Lincoln, and it was all farming community, everything, and that's exactly what happened. Their farm got surrounded by urban sprawl, and
Hmm.
then the new urbanites decided they didn't like having, roosters and the smell of his sheep and
Hmm.
stuff like that. And yeah, they had ended up having to sell it and move because of that.
Yep. And
Yeah.
that's just being pushed out, but that happens. So just because you have the perfect plot of land, if you will, now doesn't mean that 10 years, 20 years down the road, it's going to stay that way.
Yeah. Great point. Yeah, that's why I wanted to cover that a little bit. Okay, so how about vacation time?
Yeah. No, unfortunately, no vacation for us. We've got 60 animals here on the homestead, which means, this is our commitment.
Yep.
This is that insurance that we actually put our money into, knowing that we were not going to be able to just drop everything and just go. The expense alone of hiring someone to take care of 60 animals every day, the way that we like them to be taken care of,
Yeah, right.
it's high. The only time we do that is once a year, and that's in September when we have prepper camp. And so we will make that investment for that week, that we will have somebody, and we really have been blessed that we have somebody that gets it. They understand that our animals are investment. It's just not like going and feeding somebody's dog or cat. This
Right.
is our food source, and so we do make that investment to bring in somebody for that week. But besides that, um, No
Did
vacations. In fact, I don't want to be out there anymore, Sarah. I
right?
don't want to be in the
Yeah.
traffic. I don't want to be
I
on a
know. I hear
plane.
ya.
I don't want to be on a cruise ship. I don't want to be
Yep.
anything that I want to see. I honestly can get a better view by just going on the internet and watching a video of somebody. It just I don't care about crowds anymore. I don't
Yeah,
care
with
about, and
you
you
there.
can't get away from it, unfortunately.
I know.
Um, with crowds come attitudes, and again, getting back to that hot and irritable and impatient and blah blah blah. It's like, no, I don't have any desire. Can I go on vacation? I guess I could go on vacation. Do I want to go on vacation? No,
Not really. Yeah, because you have your utopia right there.
I do.
A personal question for you. Did you guys ever have kids?
Yes.
Okay. So what would your kids, they don't come and take care of the property for you ever?
No,
Or,
they're older. They're not even here. They are living their lives, and so
different states?
completely different states. Yep.
Okay. And do they live the lifestyle or they're all into the city slick and
They're
think
into
you
the
guys have
city
gone
stuff.
off
Yep.
the
Yep.
rocker?
Yep.
Okay.
I mean, we've
Yep.
raised them right. They understand. They have their preps, but they
Uh-huh.
have their consumerism.
Yep.
And that's a
Yeah.
choice, and that's something
Yep.
that, with all of us, and I will stress that. It's like, well, wow, you must not be good examples. Yes, we are good examples.
Oh yeah.
They
The
know
kids are
how to
gonna
do
make their
this,
own
they know how
decisions.
to do that. Yeah.
Yeah.
But can we take their lives away from them? No, nobody took
No.
our lives away from
Yeah.
us. And so they had the education, they had their jobs, they have their families, and you can't deny somebody that.
Absolutely.
This was a leap of faith that we decided to make, to walk out of that corporate world.
Yeah. Yeah, props. I was just curious because I was like, I wonder if like maybe one of my sons might stick around to help me out, you know? That would be nice.
That would have been too nice.
Right? Yeah, that would be too utopia, right?
Yeah.
So would you trade your current lifestyle for anything in the world? If I offered you $5 billion to walk away right now, would you do it?
Sarah, $5 billion
Yep.
would mean, I mean, Rick and I were joking. Remember this past, there was a time where there was like the lotteries were like $1
Yep.
billion or
Yep.
something. Number one, we don't have a need for that. I mean,
Yeah.
I would not even have a need for $1 million. I don't have a need for, so we kept on going down, down, down. Do we have a need for this? Do we have a need for that? And it got to, we really don't have a need for money. Like these people are, well, I would do this and I'd buy a big yacht and I'd buy a this and I buy and buy and buy and buy. No, we're mentally out of that consumer mindset.
Love
And
it.
as we're sitting out looking over our garden and overlooking the mountains in the evening time as we're sipping our tea or our coffee, it's like, we're
I'm
not on
good.
vacation. This is our home. People
Yeah.
pay good money to come up to the mountains and relax. We don't have to do that. This is our life. And we don't have the stress. We don't have the rush rat race and on and on and on. And it's I have to say we're healthier because of it. We're happier because of it. We are less stressed because of it. And it's all because we've taken the money, we left the corporate jobs where people are like, how could you do that? Why would you just leave everything you have and go live on a homestead?
Oh, I'd do
Well,
it beat.
because we are living, we're not existing, we're
Yeah.
living.
Yeah, I love that.
Yep.
That's exactly where I'm going because everybody's like, oh, you got to make money, you got to make money. My parents are because I'm just a struggling author living on my property, and well, what are you doing? You could be out there making money, and I'm like,
And you
money's not
could, but
everything.
money is, well, what it does is it allows you to buy and
Yeah.
buy and buy and buy. That's all it was. Rick and I were actually had the big home, the big cars, and we did take vacations and we did socialize and we went and went and went and went and went. But he's sitting in traffic saying words that should not be repeated.
Right.
And it's like, you know what? He's just, by the time we got home, we were always in this just bundle of nerves because the traffic was
Mhm.
always bad, the people were always bad, the on and on and on and on. Now, are we running from that? No. No,
No.
we're not running. I love people. I love to spend time with people, but we also want to survive to tell about it. And
Yep.
as it was going, It was just spin, 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 spin. And it got to the point where it's like, okay, enough is enough. We're working to spend and working to spend and working to spend.
And then the
It's
more
like,
you
forget it.
spend, the more you need, the more you
Yeah,
got to
more,
work,
more,
more
more.
you work,
And it was
more
just
the-
toys and stuff.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Absolutely. That's
Yep.
exactly what it was.
Yeah.
So the
Excellent.
answer is, would I trade this for anything? Absolutely not.
Awesome. Yeah. Yeah. The work, the effort is definitely worth it. So nice to be able to stand back and be like, yep, we did that. We got it. We hooked that up. Everything that we do on the on the 40 acres, it takes a ton of work,
If
but
it goes bad, it's your fault.
right. Yeah.
You learn how to
Yep.
do things. You take things
Learn
and
how to
you
build
make
and
things. And
yeah.
it's like, I can use the leg of this chair
Yes.
to do this,
Yep.
you
Yeah.
learn to do things like that.
Yeah, just the other day, like one of the stoppers fell off our chair outside. It's scratching across the deck. My husband's like, "Oh, we're gonna have to figure out a way to fix that." I just pull off the top to to one of the plastic bottles, stick it right on there, boop, away
And
we
it
go.
worked.
It's like,
It
wow,
worked. Yes,
yep.
absolutely. Or
Like,
you could
get
have bought a
something.
package of 4 for $12.99 on
Exactly.
Amazon, But
Uh-huh.
it was a ways to a means. It worked.
Yep. Yep, exactly. I love it. Thank you, Jane, so much for coming on and talking about this with me. This is exactly the conversation that I need to get myself fired back up, and because I've had a lot of pressure lately about, what are you doing to make a lot of money? And I'm like, I don't want to make a lot of money. I don't care. Really.
But you know what? Honestly, that is the mindset, and we've got to work on. And I'm speaking to your fan base. Think about it. It's
Yeah.
not all about money, because once that money flow stops, then it's like, okay, how are you going to survive? So start now. I mean, you can actually do this in suburbia. You can actually be doing this now. Start working towards making things yourself. Make a loaf of bread, make a donut, or make whatever it is that you go out and buy all the time. Make your mocha latte frou-frou drink. Learn
Yeah.
how to make things and do things.
And not only that, but like Rick's The Secret Garden, you can totally pull that off in just a small backyard.
One tree at a time. That's what he
Yep.
stresses. You could do
Yeah.
it in a homeowners association where you can't
Yeah.
have a garden, where you can actually have a tree and you
Yep.
can actually have shrubs.
Yeah.
Why not make them edible?
Yeah, I'll definitely link a bunch of the past episodes we've done with this one so that everybody
Thank
can.
you. Yeah, I'm
cruise
sure he'd
around.
appreciate that too.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
No problem. Well,
Sarah,
thanks
thank you so
Jane.
much for
I
inviting me
appreciate your time.
back.
Yeah.
I look forward to maybe coming back on sometime again and talking about something else or adventure I've been into.
Yeah, we always got next season. There'll be another book
good.
for sure. So
Good,
yeah.
good. Well, thank you again.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Jane, so much for coming back on the show this season. Like I said in the intro, always my pleasure to host you. I cannot wait to be able to get together and pick your brain. I'm telling you, some of the tricks that you gave me last season have just been a gem to have in the toolbox, like the olive oil for the facial blemishes. I'm telling you, really works, and I would highly recommend you head on out and pick up Jane's book. Great read, and it's just wonderful tips in there that you're not going to find anyplace else. Thanks to all my Patreon contributors. I just can't tell you how much I appreciate your support. If you would like to become a Patreon contributor, I would be most grateful, because that means we can keep the show going long into the future. And if you would like to do that, you can head on over to www.patreon.com/changingearth. That's www.patreon.com/changingearth. Thank you all for listening this week. It has been my pleasure to have you here and share my story and get to learn all kinds of great homesteading information. I cannot wait to put this stuff into practice, and I hope you are too. Until next time, remember, dream, survive, thrive.
Thank you for joining Sara for this episode of the Changing Earth podcast. Don't forget to pick up your copy of Day After Disaster, Without Land, The Walls of Freedom, Battle for the South, and Dark Days in Denver at www.author.sarafhathaway.com. If you love Sara's books and this podcast, please head over to Amazon or iTunes and let everyone know by leaving a review.